Hello and welcome back to another action-packed episode. Okay, it didn't actually start on there, but we're going to go live as well. I think that we've started our show up here on YouTube, but I believe we're just now starting up our stream over on Facebook. So guess what? Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me to talk about the Tulane Green Wave versus the Cincinnati Bearcats on our college football preview here this great Monday morning is our host, Mr. Logan Landers. How's it going, brother?
What's going on, Jeremiah? And like you said in the opening, wherever you're watching us, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, we surely appreciate all of the love and support y'all have been giving us. But man, we got a good game here between the Tulane Green Wave looking for the upset in, the biggest one in their school's history against the number 2 ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. Should be an easy day of work for the Bearcats, but you never know. Don't sleep on the Green Wave. It's going to be a good game. I can't wait to break it down.
Absolutely. And these are two teams that, it's not the game that we expect to be, the one that clinches, one thing or other. We expect the Bearcats to do really well on this. But I'll tell you one thing, the Green Wave fans are ready to come out. They're ready to watch some amazing football. They're ready for their team to take it to the field in all 4 quarters. And, the Bearcats, they've got their work cut out for them when it comes to sustaining where they're at, because they've got to show really well that they can just walk through these teams that shouldn't be an issue. And they've got to, get ready for these big games coming up for the playoffs, and they want to play for a national championship. So they've got to keep that perfect record from here on to the end to make sure that goes well. And they've got to show that, they've got to show what they can do. But another big problem, but another big strategy for the Bearcats is how much do you show on the field when you play someone like the Green Wave in anticipation of the other teams you've got coming up? Because if you show too much, they're going to be watching that game footage. They're going to be looking for every little idea that they can get of how to face the Bearcats in these future matchups. So you have to be really careful with the Bearcats, to decide what you're going to show and how much of your hand you're going to show during this game. So without further ado, Mr. Landers, tell us, what do the Green Wave and the Bearcat fans have to look forward to this coming football game?
Well, like I said, if you're Tulane, you kind of have an advantage because, let's face it, Jeremiah, college football has been insane this year. Just with the amount of upsets we've seen. I mean, my goodness, this past weekend, we saw Illinois, who was unranked, against the number 7 ranked at the time, Penn State, go into a 9-overtime game with the Fighting Illini getting the win in probably one of the longest football games you're going to see this year. I know, goodness, I was tuning into that, and I'm like, man, when's this going to end? Both these guys, they wouldn't score, and the other team would tie it up, and it was an absolutely crazy game. But that just shows you that even if you are an unranked team, and Illinois does have an under 500 record, doesn't mean you're out of it. You can still play spoiler. You can still come in here against Cincinnati and put up a great fight. And Cincinnati, they did have a tough test last week against Navy. I mean, we broke it down last week, and they only won that game by a touchdown. It was a closer game than a lot of people, including myself, expected. I mean, if Navy had a couple more minutes on the clock, because they did have a really good surge in the 4th quarter, they might have pulled something off, because they were down at one point 20-10 going, in the 3rd quarter. But, man, then they just started clicking. And, the last quarter was about 50 seconds left in the game. But if they had a few more minutes, I feel like Navy might have pulled something off. But time, unfortunately, was not on their side, and they were not able to do it. But let's talk about that game last week, since we're on topic of it. Cincinnati, like I said, they did pull out the win, but it was a pretty close game. In a game that I think they should have really put the beating on Navy and put up a lot of points. They just weren't able to. Desmond Ridder, the quarterback, had a pretty solid day. 18 of 30, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. So not too shabby. Nothing to write home about, but nothing awful either. The running game, Jerome Ford led the way, 15 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. Had a 43-yard run that he broke off. So the running game, not too much to speak of either. Josh Weil, the receiver for Cincinnati, led the way. 4 catches for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. So have yourself a day, young man. But the defense is what really kind of helped get that win in the end. But they got 1 sack on the day. I felt like they should have had more, but they only had that 1 sack. They did have 11 tackles for losses, though. So what they weren't getting for sacks, they were making up for in those backfield hits from the running back and on the receivers along those lines. Joel DeBlanco led the way with 15 tackles on the day, so he looked great. And it was a closer game, like I said, than people thought it should be. I felt that Cincinnati should have blown them out by 20, 30 points, but it was a close win. They did win nonetheless. Arquan Bush got the interception on the day with a pick six for Cincinnati. So that was, that helped out. And I think that, if you're Cincinnati, that kind of humbled you a little bit because, they are the number 2 team in the country. They have looked dominant the entire season. But now that you face Navy and you did win, but you kind of barely won, I know you had that big lead, but they got erased pretty quick. You got to think that, you have upcoming games, like you said, against Tulane, and they have some games against Tulsa, South Florida, and their biggest test is in later November against the SMU Mustangs. I think that this was kind of a humbling experience for the Bearcats, for Desmond Ridder, and the rest of those Bearcats to show that, we're not unbeatable. Even though we are ranked really good, we've had a great season, we can't take teams, whether it's Navy or whoever, lightly because they can put up some points and anyone can wear that Cinderella's shoe at the end of the day. They can pull off that upset. And if you're Tulane, you've not had the best season. They only have 1 win on the year. They're looking to play spoiler the rest of their way out, and they faced off against the SMU Mustangs last week. They lost 55-26. That put Tulane at 1-6 on the year. So Michael Pratt, 11-22 passing, 234 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he looked really well. You need him to have a game similar to that this upcoming week against Cincinnati if you want to get that win. The running game looked really well. Tyjae Spears and Cameron Carroll led the way. Both those guys, those 2-headed monsters they used for the Green Wave, both had around 80 yards rushing. Spears with the touchdown. So if you want to be successful for Tulane, you got to get that offense to step up a little bit. They scored 26 last week. If they want to win this week, they might have to score a little bit more because Cincinnati does have an explosive offense. But the big key for me, and when I was looking at both of these teams, is how is the defense going to play out? Because Tulane has, one of the worst defenses in terms of points scored against this year. Out of 130 teams, they are ranked 128. They give up around 44 points a game. So you got to hope that they have just, a lucky game that they give up nearly not that many points if you want to get this win. And meanwhile, on the flip side, Cincinnati is one of the best teams in terms of scoring defense. They only give up 14 points a game. So really 2 sides of the coin here. You have Tulane who can play spoiler, but you got to lock it down on defense. And you have Cincinnati, who has a tremendous defense. Just got to make sure that you don't have a potential upset brewing. But I think overall, I do feel confident in picking the Cincinnati Bearcats to win this one in the end. And I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I think Cincinnati is going to win this one, 35 to Tulane 10. So I think that Tulane is going to get some points on the board. But I think that Cincinnati defense is just going to be a little bit too stout for them. And they will get the win and remain in that top 4, already locked in for the college football playoff. And we'll see how much longer they can keep it up there because they've looked great the whole season. They almost made it last year, and it looks like it might be destiny for them this year to make it this year. So we'll see what they can do, but they will get the win in this one by a pretty good margin.
Whew. Well, let's go Bearcats. Let's see what they can do there. Now, for the Green Wave, I definitely agree. They've got to come out on the field. They got to play. If they can just keep the Bearcats offense off the field for a little bit more time and just get in there, find those opportunities to score, then if they start off with those 10 points, you never know what can happen in a strong fourth quarter or, depending on how, much they've kept that other team off the field in the offense, you may just start to wear people down on the defense side and just find those opportunities to throw a Hail Mary, to run straight down the middle and really get some points on the board. Who knows? So I definitely know the Green Wave are going to come in here exactly like what you're talking about. They can't win the national championship this year, but they can sure come out of an incredible upset back to their school. And what kind of night's it going to be down on Tulane University if they, come off with this win, So I know that they're thinking about that. For the Bearcats, they've got to keep it straight. They got to keep flying straight and get through this game and get on to the next part. Well, for everybody watching, tell us, what do you think? Who will be the winner in this, and what will the final score be? We'd love to hear in the comments what you think the final score will be. And if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. All of your shares and telling your friends and family about us by word of mouth has really helped us to grow so crazy in the last couple of years. It's been really an amazing ride so far. We're so thankful to all of your help for helping us come every single week to you. I don't know if you guys tune in every single Monday, but we are here. So if you want to see some amazing sports coverage live, and then tune in throughout the week to not only our live show, but to our podcast, then jump in there. And speaking of which, if you're not on our podcast yet, it's time to join us over at 100 Yards of Football, wherever you listen to podcasts. It could be on Spotify, it could be on Apple Podcasts, Google, could be on Stitcher, over on the Believe Podcast Network's direct website. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, we are there for you. Just look up 100 Yards of Football, and then you'll see our 50-yard line football sitting there. And we have so many amazing episodes. Not only do we bring you game previews every single week for amazing football games that are coming up, but in the off season, we talk about the teams that are coming up with our team previews and our player previews. And we have these amazing, what I call evergreen videos you can watch anytime, year round, that are incredible interviews with the historic players, the historic coaches, and some of the amazing fandom and other broadcasters in the football world. So every single week, we bring you multiple videos like that, and you can go into our back catalog and listen to some incredible interviews with our staff. And we have an incredible team here, and we just love to have you join us over on our podcast. So for our entire team here, I am the producer, Jeremiah Long, and you've heard our host bringing you this week's college preview for Cincinnati versus Tulane. Let's go Green Wave. Let's go Bearcats. And we here at 100 Yards of Football, we'll be right back with another live episode.